At 22 years old, she made a decision that would change the next 3 years of her life. Not because she loved the man she married, but because the house she lived in had quietly turned against her. This case reveals how reputation attacks inside families can slowly isolate someone. So if you ever wonder why intelligent people sometimes make decisions that seems irrational, the answer might not be weakness, it might be the pressure. So I started looking at the timeline of what happened inside that house. And the more I examined the details, the clearer the pattern became. This is a case file 8, the escape marriage. At first glance, it looked like a normal marriage. A young woman in her early 20s agreeing to settle down. But when I started examining the events that led to that decision, something in this story didn't add up. So I went back to the beginning. Not just the niece timeline, the aunt timeline. Because sometimes the reason something happens today is hidden inside someone else's past.
You're 22 now. Do you know how old I was when I got married? 21. Your age is the right time.
And I'm still adjusting to the city, work, studies, everything is new. I want to take time before making a decision like that.
Work won't stay with you forever. Your parents trusted me with you. If something happened, people will question our family.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm not a child. My parents raised me to take care of myself.
You may think that, but society doesn't see it that way. An unmarried woman, your age living here, people start talking. And when people talk, they don't just talk about you, they talk about all of us.
At first, this sounded like ordinary advice, but when I examined the timeline later, I noticed something. The same consent appears again and again. Morning conversation, dinner conversations, phone calls with relatives, and the message was always the same: reputation, what people might say, what society might think. Sometimes pressure doesn't come from cruelty, it comes from fear. Fear of what other people might say, fear of losing respect, fear of being judged by a community that is always watching. And that fears can quietly control someone else's life. Not just in one house, not just in one country, across families, across cultures, across the world. When reputation becomes the strongest force in the room, someone else's freedom often becomes the cost.
You stay in your room too much. People notice these things. I'm studying. There is still a lot I want to learn. Or maybe you think you're already smarter than everyone else? While you're living here, family matters stay inside this house. If something needs to be said, you talk to me.
At this stage, the criticism was still private. Kitchen conversations, hallway remarks, small corrections. But when I mapped the pattern, it became clear. These comments weren't random. They were slowly building a story, and stories have a way of traveling. Your aunt says, you're still learning many things?
City life changes people, sometimes not in a good way.
The comment itself was small, but it was the first time the criticism appeared outside the house, which raised another question. How far had the story already spread? When I examined the timeline more closely, another story began to emerge. 21 years earlier, the aunt had been in a similar position. She married at 21. Her husband was 7 years older. He had studied abroad. His family was highly educated.
I was thinking I might enroll in an English class. Focus on learning the household first. Yes, she still has a lot to understand.
Comments like this rarely sound cruel, but repeated often enough, they begin to shape how someone sees themselves.
I want to improve my English. Maybe one day I could work.
Why worry about that? Just focus on the house.
Um, I just thought,
You always think too much.
Moments like this happened once. They happened repeatedly, and slowly a quiet survival rule formed. Peace required silence. Experiences like this leaves something behind. The brain creates rules that help people survive pressure. Rules like settle earlier, stabilize quickly, and reduce uncertainty. Those rules helped the aunt survive, but the rules never updated. 20 years later, another young woman enters the same house. Her niece, 22, ambition, prepare for career, a completely different generation.
you should start thinking about marriage. People your age shouldn't wait too long.
Um, I didn't come here to follow someone else's timeline. I came here to build my own. When I compared the timelines, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The aunt had married a man 7 years older. Now she was encouraging the niece to marry someone 6 years older. Almost same structure, almost same timeline. The aunt wasn't intentionally repeating history. Her brain was repeating a survival rule, a rule that once helped her endure pressure. But when those rules remain unexamined, they can quietly shape someone else's future. Sometimes I feel like I'm expected to live someone else's life, not my own. This was the moment the pattern becomes visible, not to the aunt, but to the niece. Breaking a pattern rarely happens in one moment. Sometimes it takes years, years to understand what happened, years to rebuild confidence, years to heal. This case began with a question about marriage, but the deeper question is something every generation eventually faces. Are you repeating the pattern or breaking it? For the first time in years, she believed she was free, away from the house, away from the accusations, away from the people who had already decided who she was. But the freedom, built on desperation, rarely lasts. In that moment of desperation, she made a decision she believed she would finally give her a new life. She agreed to marry someone she barely knew. But what she didn't know was that the story about her had already traveled further than she had. By the time she arrived in the new city, people had already made up their minds, and the people who pushed her into that decision would later claim it was her choice all along. What happened next would move the story from private conflict to public humiliation.